Pop in, say hi. If you've never come into one of my lives before, hi, I'm Cindy. I explore the inside and the outside. And here on Sunday nights, we have a little crew that goes on where we actually come in, keep each other company. The conversation is a little bit different than my Monday to Friday show. We try to keep it light, and it's including the crew that hangs out with me on Sunday night, because there's a reason I call it Chatters Live. It's because they chat more than I do. Well, I don't know about that. I'm a pretty good chatter, but you know what? It is in that company that you keep, right? We are who we surround ourselves with. And that's the truth. And I really love this crew, this group of beautiful people that have been hanging out with me now for, oh my goodness, it's got to be 10 years now that we've been kind of hanging out here together on Sunday nights. I know it's been a long time. I've actually been on YouTube now for 12 years, but it did take me a little bit of time to build up the confidence, right? To be able to come in front of the camera. I don't think I was very good in the beginning, but right from the beginning, I was genuine. I was myself. I always came in and didn't try to represent myself as something other than what I was. And I kind of just felt my way along. Hello, Owen. Hello, Andrew. I just felt my way along, just understanding, that it was going to work out the way that it was supposed to work out. I didn't have much clue in being a YouTube creator. I went gung ho in the beginning, and I was in a pretty good category, and it gave me lots of views and stuff. And I thought I was going to be a YouTube superstar. And in that, I became to love being on YouTube. I actually loved being in the background. I love studying the analytics, studying on all those little things that I can improve in. And I was determined not to lose my channel. And there was lots of close calls. I'm not going to say there were close calls, because in my heart and in my mind, there wasn't a chance in hell that I was going anywhere. But it was in that creativity, being creative. How am I going to keep my channel going? And we kind of touched on a few different topics. And then in this process of moving along and studying and getting excited about being on YouTube and having something that was truly mine, because even in this day and age, being a YouTube creator is not the norm, right? It's more popular than it was, but it was a process. And for me, I felt it was very comfortable. And in that comfortableness, I think I found that I could make a few mistakes, that I could stumble and bumble my way along. And because I had this amazing crew with me that's been hanging out with me since the beginning, that I felt comfortable in just being who I was. And then, of course, there is that learning process. And that learning process, whoa, that kind of threw me for a loop, because every learnt topic that came across my path was only the prerequisite for the next lesson, right? For the next topic. And I found in that process that I could only be the person that I was in that moment, because I found myself in a state of change. I recognized it right away because as a young one, as a kid, change was something that always was smacking me upside the head, whether I wanted the change to come into my life or it was dictated to me or if it was just a happy chance. No, it wasn't. Most of the time, it wasn't a happy chance, right? It was a happen chance, and but in feeling my way out in my childhood with all these constant fluctuations of change, all this adapt and conquer and adjustment that I had to do, that I kind of felt that I was kind of in my, what's the word I'm looking for? Not my realm. I was kind of in something that I understood. And I kind of rode those waves. I kind of rode those waves. And that happened, my channel crashing on me. That happened like 3 years in to being a creator on YouTube. And it was just my determination to not give up, to find a way, to adapt and conquer, to overcome my limitations. And then it was in that pep talking to myself, everything's going to be okay, right? We're going to figure this out. We're going to figure this out. And then also, like I said, having this amazing crew to root me on. And they've been rooting me on for 10 years, like everybody here in this moment right now, right? With the exception of Tammy. But I would have to say, Tammy has been treading water in the past few months. And I think she's pretty caught up to everybody here when it comes to hanging out with me and hanging out with the different topics that I've brought onto YouTube. And actually, all of them have been witness to the change that has come into my life and to witness that I never gave up, no matter what, in just showing up, right? I understand that that is just going to be the prerequisite. Whether I fail in it, I succeed in it, or I excel in that, right? I have my moments in all three. And that's the truth. And it's great that I can laugh about it. It really is great that I can laugh about it because it makes it so that, we're all going to be 80 and 90-year-olds, right? We're going to come and we're going to go and we're going to introduce new people into the lives and we are going to make friends, right? We're going to make friends and yet we're all still going to be here, right? Sunday nights are always, right? No matter what, I am going to find a way. Why? Because I've always found a way. I have always found a way. And it's a little help from my friends, a little bit of help from YouTube and Google, a little bit of help. I'm going to take some credit in that, because it is in my determination, it is in my creativity, and it is in those lessons of never giving up, in finding a way. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. Whistle while you work, right? Dancing in the rain and recognizing in the end, truly, truly, everything is going to be okay, right? And change is ever present. Change is ever present. Even starting this week, you guys, I mentioned it on my other live show, What's My Good Cheer this week, but I am taking a university program and it's going to be based in addictions And I thought it was time, to get some credits under my belt. I'm not going back to university, but technically I am, because this is a program out of the university, it's Simon Fraser University, actually out of British Columbia. It's a free program and it's an accredited program. So it's going to benefit me and benefit the people that I work with. Not only that, you guys, I registered a website today. I don't know where I'm going to come up the money to pay for the website, but I registered it and we are going to start working on building a website. And I think once I've come out of this course at the university, Simon Fraser University, that once I come out of that course, that I think probably it's time for me to actually put that work that I put into myself and put it to good use, to put it in respect to helping others, right? I am grateful that I stumbled on to the lessons in exploring the inside and exploring the outside. I don't know how it came across my path. I don't know how I munched onto it like a pit bull with a piece of raw meat in my mouth, but I did. I have no idea how I recognize each movement and each lesson as a prerequisite to the next experience that I was going to have. But I did, right? And I'm grateful for that. But I do believe I was led into it by whoever or whatever. And if that's the case, then, you know, it's just not my duty, but it is in my want that we are going to serve it out there. And what better way to serve it out there as me, as that example that it can be done, right? My 12 years on YouTube is the prime example, is the example, right? You can go back to 12 years ago and really experience my experiences and our experiences, because you guys hung out with me in all that time, right? That you guys can really feel out where I've come through. You can see for your own eyes my trials and tribulations. You can see my successes and my failures, right? And I'm grateful for that. Maybe in the moment I wasn't, right? It was a scary experience. I'm not going to say that it wasn't. But having the prerequisites and knowing that in the end everything was going to be okay and that I had my crew here, right, to cheer me on in the process, it made it easier, right? And in that process, I was still able to dish out a few, wasn't I? Right? In being that example in those experiences that I had, I was still the example for others that it can be done and that it will be done. 100%. Okay, let me come into the comments for a couple minutes here, see what everybody is up to. Yeah, Andrew Owen too has been here right from the very beginning too, and Tammy. Yeah, right from the very, I would have to say from the very first month or two, they were both with me. I have no idea how they came across my path, but they've been with me ever since, and very rarely do they miss a get together, right? Very rarely. And yeah, very, very grateful for them. Very grateful for them, 100%. Um, are you serious? Oh my goodness. I have no idea how many videos I have up right now. I've got hundreds of videos. I'm sure I've got hundreds of videos. up, especially now, especially with the podcast where I am going 5 days a week in What's My Good Cheer. And then Sunday nights, I'm here in Chatters Live. Saturdays, I have been taking off. And I think I've been taking Saturdays off now. It's got to have been for a couple of years now. I've been taking Saturdays off. And I take most of September off too for my trip that I go on every year. I take September off, but really I'm not taking it off because I'm taking you guys with me. You guys just don't get to see those explorers until after I get back, and I usually start posting those ones in October, right? Last year I only did 4 provincial parks. I think I did 4 provincial parks. I think I had 5 or 6 videos all together because I had some of those walk with me Cindy jeans from the trails. The year before that, I had 10 provincial parks. No, it wasn't 10. It was 12 provincial parks. But I only posted 10 of them because, well, I ran out of storage. I ran out of Google storage. I was trying to do it all in good quality and right. And it is a process for me because I'm not technically inclined. And I think there aren't a lot of people who start as YouTube creators who are actually technically inclined. It's about just getting into the mix of it. Just getting, everybody has one of these, right? I use my phone in content creation. I've been using my phone since the very beginning. Yes, I have a Google Pixel. Yes, it has great footage, right? I just love the cameras on the Pixels. But I did have a little Canon camcorder that worked pretty amazing too. It was the not knowing how to use the computers and not understanding terminology like RAM and gigabytes and stuff like this, and not being an editor, right? Not understanding software and codexes and all of that. All of that had to be learned, but I learned it in the stumbling, right? I learned it in not knowing anything when I started, but understanding Google was there for me. If I had a question, YouTube was there for me. If I had a question in that, and lots of it was just pushing buttons, just in experimenting and trying new things, right? And it was something. Give me 1 second. I'm just going to turn off this. There we go. I could just see that it was reflecting. It's not making a difference. Oh, it's my hair, you guys. It's my hair in my eyes. That's all it was. Yeah, my hair's down. I got my ponytail thing. We can pull my hair up, but it won't do much for my bangs. Yeah, but it's a process. And so if anybody ever felt that, they might be interested and they have some insights or they want to tell some stories. Like Tammy, I think you would be absolutely amazing on YouTube. I think you are very insightful. I think you're very extroverted, and I think probably it might be something you might enjoy doing. And for anybody, right? Because lots of us have insights, lots of us have ideas, lots of us have connections with whoever or whatever. And, we don't have, well, we do have ways, but I don't think sometimes that we have the courage or the bravery to think that we're capable of creating content. And it's so easy. Everybody has one of these, right? Everybody has a camera. Everybody has video. You just have to push that play button and just start talking, right? And then just upload it. Just upload it to your YouTube, and it's there for prosperity, right? And in truth, even I did Google diaries for the longest time. I think for a couple of years I did Google diaries. And I just set them to private, right? Because I was having an experience. But a lot of that experience, I would have to say, Cindy, truly wasn't there. I was catching things as they were flying by me, right? But I wasn't catching it all 100%. And in that process, it was a lot of stuff that I didn't think would be relevant for my content, um and for here on YouTube. But I wanted it there because I understand that, eventually Cindy's going to be gone, right? 50 years from now, Cindy's probably not going to be here. Maybe, but probably not, right? So who's to say that some of those things that I caught as they were floating by me, right, might not be or may be relevant somewheres down the line. And because YouTube and Google, I suspect, are forever, right? That no matter what, that insight is there. And I would hope that it might be because of you guys understand bots. You know what it's like when you watch a video, whatever that topic is that you're watching on YouTube. If you watch the whole thing, right? More than likely, you are going to get suggested something else in that exact same topic, right? Because they're saying, okay, wow, Tammy like this. Let's give her some more Cindy. Right? And that's how it works, right? And it was something that I learned pretty early, that I recognized that pretty early with my content. And those small topics that I found curious, that I found interesting, and I would sit and watch it. And then I would recognize they would suggest me something else, sometimes on the same topic, but lots of times it was a little bit of a variance in it, right? There was something a little bit different in it. And it allowed me to expand when I thought I was sitting in the exact same topic. And I recognize that as part of the baby steps, right? Part of the baby steps. And then every once in a while, I don't know if you guys get this, I get a little notification where Google will say, would you like to try some different topics, right? Would you like to expand in your interests and see some different topics? And I always hit yes. I always hit yes because I understand that possibly in that repetitiveness that quite often I am staying in the same topic, and I actually got it down packed. So it is time for me to expand a little bit. So if I'm not making that move and bringing the change of topics into my eyes in front of me for me to take in and choose from, then I'm grateful that I have Google and YouTube to say, oh my goodness, right? Time for a little bit of change for Cindy. Let's see if she's interested in change. And they just always ask, right? They say, are you ready for some new topics? And the past couple of times they asked, I was quite happy in the content that I was into, right? In the moment, I'm pretty much sticking with my subscriptions, but I have been introduced to a couple of new content creators. Sometimes they're a little bit beyond me, just like Carl Jung was. Like Carl Jung was being suggested to me for, oh my goodness, for a few years now. But his content was so heavy, I found it hard to sit in, especially, I should be sitting in it because I explore the inside, right? But I would find it difficult to digest because of I don't know, maybe it's the medical terminology, maybe it is in the mindfulness terminology, maybe it was in the mix of both of it. And because I was such a realist, I wasn't thinking that, that somebody who was actually a clinical psychologist should also be introducing the religious and spiritual and the mindful topics mixed in with the psychology, because I thought it was confusing. I thought it was confusing. I'm very much a realist, and it's the way I like my content, but I understand this world is moving and I have to move along with it. We all do, but we all step into it at different stages, right? And, even when I look at my own family, like half my family is woke to some of these ideas and they're very creative and they're very immersed in in the directions that they're going into. But I also have members of my family who are a little bit agitated by our movement and it doesn't interest them in any way. And then I have some members of my family who are polite. Right? So we can be ourselves, right, in these topics that we delve into, that we find interesting, that moves us and changes us, right? But be able to be still accepted in that and not looked at like we are going off the deep end in any way. And you guys know that I get punch drunk sometimes in what I do. But when I feel I'm getting that way, then I know it's time for a walk. And this week I'll be on the bike. Maybe tomorrow, maybe not tomorrow. They haven't cleaned the streets yet because there's still a little bit of a compacted ice. I woke up yesterday and I had about, well, probably a good, maybe half a foot, 6 inches of snow on the ground. It warmed up quite a bit in the afternoon, so some of it melted, but it didn't get quite over the minus temperatures. So it was just melting from the sun beating on it, and not actually from the warmth in the weather. Today was a little bit different. It got to the +2. Tomorrow, +2 today, but +16 tomorrow. It's going to be beautiful. So I'm hoping sometime this week those summer Zambonis will be out on the streets. And the summer Zambonis are actually uh, they're the same as the winter ones, but instead of scooping up the snow, they have brooms underneath them and they broom the streets. And then they have another one that comes up behind them that have the water tanks, and then they wash the streets. And then they have the little ones that are about the width of the sidewalk, and they do the same thing with the sidewalks, right? And during that time, it's very important to keep your windows closed because the dust and the sand is in the air. You guys can see all my ornaments behind me. So I don't want too much work when it comes to dusting. And actually, I've been kind of putting off the dusting behind me for the past couple of weeks because I know it's going to be a big job in dusting everything off. I have to pull all the pictures down and dust all the pictures, and I have to clean all the glass, and I have to take all my ornaments down and dust the shelves, and then I have to dust the ornaments and put them back. So it's going to be a project. So I'll just leave it for one day and I'll get it all done in one day. Can accumulate a little bit of dust in the meantime. I don't think it'll be more than a week now. Sorry. It won't be more than a week now before they clean up the streets, and then I can clean it and we are all set for summer. I'll probably have to do it a couple more times during the course of summer. It's usually every 3 weeks or so where I have to dust everything, but then it's a little bit of dusting here and there. So if I just maintain it, then it's just a couple of times during the course of the summer. That's the one thing about being eclectic, right? Is you do have to do a little bit of dusting. Grateful I don't have allergies, right? Uh, my sisters seem to have a little bit of allergies going on, but for myself, right, I've never had allergies, never had a headache, never had a bleeding nose. Grateful. I probably recognize because I was uh, kind of a caregiver in my own family growing up, that possibly whoever, whatever, gave me good health so that I could do that job. So, even if I'm not doing as much of that job as I used to, a little bit because there's not the need for it, a little bit because there's not the want for that, and a little bit is because, well, again, the family has dispersed a little bit, right? Everybody is moving along and living their own lives. And since COVID, I don't know about you guys, but since COVID, our family gatherings have been pretty minimal. We haven't been doing Christmas. We used to do these big Christmas gatherings every year. Now we get together for a couple of hours on Christmas Eve just to do the gift exchanges and say hello to everybody. But the Easters and the Thanksgivings and like these holidays where we made a point of getting together, we're not doing it anymore. And we did it right up until COVID, and maybe COVID was just the permission, right? Because as you get older, it takes a lot of energy to put on a gathering, right? To put on a family gathering. And lots of times with these extended families, right, that you want to split it up between, the in-laws and the parents and stuff. And so in that fair exchange, right, it takes away that what is it? Responsibility, that little bit of guilt, right? When you're showing up because you have to and not necessarily because you want to anymore. But yeah, we still manage to get together, but it's a whole lot different, right? It's a whole lot different now. I don't think it's something bad. I think there are benefits to not having those, right? My sister used to dish out lots of money, to put on a big feast and everybody coming over and making sure everybody had a present and stuff, plus all the cleaning and prep. And also, I helped her with that. My sister was very good to me, and it was a way for me to say thank you in making sure that that heavy work that I was capable of doing because I was healthy, right? That it took the load off of her and it made it possible, right? To have these big gatherings. But they've changed, and I think they've changed for a lot of people, a lot of families, right? A lot of families, I think, have adjusted in the holidays. But then again, traditions change too. And because we are ethnically and culturally very mishmashed with each other now, that it makes it so that it's a little bit easier, right? Because we're still kind of new in bringing cultures together, right? Different traditions together. I don't know about you guys, but we're a little bit of a Heinz 57 in our family, right? All different kinds of nationalities going on. Yeah. Okay, let's come back into these comments here. But um wow, I can't believe you've watched almost all of my videos and my lives too. Oh my goodness. Like, yeah, that's a lot, Tammy. That's a lot. I appreciate that. And also it gives you the insights to better understand me too. But if you do happen to find something that you might find beneficial, or insights in some of those videos that you're going through that might make good shorts, right? I haven't been doing the shorts in any way. For me, I try to stay away from them visually because they can become very consuming. I don't know if you guys do much in the way of scrolling. I don't scroll very much. Well, I shouldn't say I do scroll, but I keep myself busy in the conversations that take my interest. And I also, right, I'm a reseller. So I use Facebook quite a bit because that's where Marketplace is. So I can stay on top of selling things, right? I actually had my bonsai pot shared the other day. So I'm pretty excited because the share was through a bonsai group that ships all across Canada. And they are people who are really serious in their passion of creating bonsais. So there's a pretty good chance that I might get some interest in my bonsai pot. And that would be, whoa, that would be amazing because that would pay for my camping spots for September. And that would be, wow, that would be something to take off that list, right? To have that checked off, all my camping spots off my goal list. That would be absolutely awesome if I could do that. And there was something else. Oh yeah, my I have a carved owl from a very famous artist here in Canada, and I listed it for $1,500. I only paid, oh, I don't know, $1.50 or $2. I don't think I even paid $2. Probably paid $1.50 for it. And then to find out it was a very early work by a famous bronze artist here in Canada. And when he started out, he was doing woodwork, right? And he was painting these wildlife animals. And yeah, it just so happened that I had one sitting on my shelf. It was sitting on my shelf for years. It was sitting there, right? I only picked it up for less than a couple of dollars. And then I noticed when I was looking for things to list, and I know I've got to start moving some of my lovelies along because the idea is for me to be an RVer in my retirement, right? I think it will suit my channel very well. Give me lots of content every week. I can have a video up every week in my adventures and in camping and different provincial parks. Who knows, right? I'd love to go down south, like to Arizona or Arkansas, and actually do some really serious crystal digging. They have beautiful crystals down south. I don't know if any of you guys watch The Crystal Digger. He's right. He's pretty amazing, and I follow his content. He goes all over the country, right? He's even been up here in Canada. He's in the same mines that I like to go digging for amethyst. He's dug amethyst there too. But because he does content on digging for crystals, they actually invite him to do the serious digging in the fresh spots and stuff. So he finds some pretty amazing things, eh? Uh I think you came on fairly early, Andrew. You did come in fairly early into my content. I would have to say, Eva, you know what? You always commented on my videos, so Tammy will let me know when she's in some of those really old videos. She'll take a look at your comments and see if she can spot them, right? In those really old videos. She's been in them lately. So yeah, I'm sure Tammy will let me know. Times have changed, Cindy. You are right, since COVID-19, and even traditions. Many people don't even send out birthday cards or Christmas cards, etc. It was the opposite growing up in our times. It was, right? I always send birthday cards and Christmas cards to my sister Tracy. She loves those traditions. For myself, it's not a big deal if I get a Christmas card or I don't. I do like to send out Christmas cards and those small appreciations of, you guys hanging out with me and stuff. So if I don't have your address, make sure that I get your address, right? So that I can send you a Christmas card. I do it every year. And but yeah, you're right, Tammy. The traditions have changed. And we things are always changing, right? Things are always changing, but just because we can remember our generation, right? But we have to remember that the generations that are coming up now will say the exact same thing when they have children and grandchildren. They'll say, "Oh my goodness, remember we had YouTube and we had content on our phone, and right? Now they got Beam Me Up Scotty and right? Right? We have no idea what's coming in the future. Like, even if you just look back in the past 50 years, you could see how much change has come into this world, right? Just in the past 50 years. So, and things are moving so fast. Well, because of this digital age where we're this close to each other now, who would have ever thought that I would be sitting here having these conversations when I was sitting in front of a TV that didn't have remote control, where I actually had to get up to change the channel on the television, right? And then to see the Jetsons and to actually see George Jetson talking to his boss on a monitor, right? When at that time, computers and monitors weren't even in existence. And what about their maid, the robot? They've got the maids and the robots now, right? That's a little bit of foreshadowing, don't you think? That somebody in their creative mind, what you think about is realized. And sometimes it's just not, right? I think of it now and it's here, right? It's not always like that, because you think of it and then you work at it. It's like going on a diet. Just you think about going on a diet and then you go on the diet, but then you have to just keep working at the diet and visualizing yourself in that bikini, right? And so that's the same kind of idea in evolution. It's just a matter of, what do we want to see for the future, right? What do we want to see for the future? And it will be realized. And actually, a good example of that is um, Cameron. What's his name? the big producer of, oh, I can't even remember the movies now. The Blue People. Andrew, help me out with that one. I saw the movies too. I've seen all of them, not the online ones or the Netflix ones, but I've seen the ones that hit the theaters, right? Avatar, right? That movie Avatar. He wrote that movie and had that movie totally designed in his brain, and it was in his brain for 10 years because he refused to make the film until the technology was available to him, right? So we thought about it. He worked it, he imagined it, he knew how it was going to turn out, how he was going to manifest it, but it just stayed in his brain for 10 years before the capability of actually making, Avatar. James Cameron, right? Yeah, James Cameron. Yeah. Brilliant mind, right? Brilliant mind. Total experts in their field, right? Let me have a sip of my juice. I saw Kathy come in. Hello, Kathy. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of the phone. I do phone my sister Tracy on occasion because she just doesn't like technology. She's like my mother that way. My mother did not. My mother was very adverse to technology. But I tell you, when Nintendo came out, my mother could sit there and play Nintendo all day. It didn't make sense because she hated technology, right? I never played the video games in any way, but everybody in my family loved Nintendo. Man, if we had kept our Nintendo game and all those cartridges that we had, they'd be worth a fortune right now. Right? I don't know if you guys remember this, but when I was a kid, I remembered half my silver, my coins that I'd pull out of my pocket or my dad would give me out of his pocket. And I would look through that change. Half of it would be actual silver. Not only actual silver, they would be seated liberties, right? Coins. There would be V nickels in there. There would be reals. I remember the real dimes in my loose change. You were actually able to use it as currency at the grocery store. And now, oh my goodness, people go metal detecting and they get super excited when they find a real dime or um, the bigger ones, the 1 reals and the 2 reals. I think they go all the way up to 8 reals, right? So, but to think, as little kids, if I had started to save that silver, right? Do you guys remember the finding reals in your pocket? Being Americans, I bet you guys found the reals in the loose change and didn't think anything of it as kids. I know I didn't think anything of it. I don't think we even collected silver coins until probably the 90s, right? When I was a server and a bartender, and then I would buy them out of the tills when they float into the tills, right? As change, I would buy them out, but I always spent them in the end. But I remember I used to go metal detecting, and when I found like a fork or a spoon, a sterling silver fork or spoon, and I would take it to the gold buyers and they would give me $40, or no, it wasn't $40. They'd give me $10 for a spoon or a fork. And I'd get super excited because I just got my car and I could, right, put a lot of gas in my car for $10. So I would go metal detecting to get the silver so that I could sell it to put gas in my car, right? Yeah, I liked metal detecting. My dad was the one who got me hooked on metal detecting. It was a hobby that me and him did together. We loved metal detecting together. Me and my dad, we had lots of passions that we did together. I didn't gamble, but he used to like to take me gambling with him because I was his lucky charm, right? He always called me his lucky charm. Whenever he'd go to Reno or Vegas, he'd always make sure he piled the family in the car and said he was there. And right, we go off to Reno or Vegas. He even take me by himself, right? And we go to Reno or Vegas. He'd take me out for dinners and nightclubs, and we go to concerts and Broadway plays and stuff. Not in Broadway, but we'd go to the Playhouse in Vancouver, and we would see big productions and stuff at the theater. I don't think they were things that my mother enjoyed doing, or she was working, right? And because my dad liked to do these things, he always took me, right? He didn't have any boys, even the sports games, right? He'd take me to the Lions football games. There was um, the Whitecaps was the soccer team that they had at the time in Vancouver, and then they had the Canucks was the hockey team. And he took me to all of these things, but I spent most of my time at the concession, right? Or just hanging out with my dad at these things, right? But he didn't have any boys, so I spent a lot of time in outings and doing things with my dad. Oh, right. Do you know that the copper, there was a Instagram post and somebody was making the last alimony payment because his child had turned 18 years old, and he rented a truck and he filled the truck up with the amount for his last payment of alimony, all in pennies, and he dropped it in his ex-wife's driveway, just as like, I'm done with this, right? And he made his last payment in pennies. But the copper penny right now is worth 2.8 cents. And the Americans, you guys still have your penny, don't you? Yeah. Like, it doesn't make sense to have the penny because it costs more money to make the penny than what the penny is worth. 2.8 cents is the copper value in the penny, not to mention the production cost in the penny, right? But just the copper value is 2.8 cents. And he made a big joke about, making his last point, his last payment in pennies, and took a little video showing him dumping all the pennies in her driveway. And then I just left a little comment just because he was all proud of himself for doing that. It was kind of not a nice thing to do to his wife, but I guess probably their relationship was pretty strained or something. But I just made a little comment. Did you know that the penny is worth 2.8 cents? She could sell that all to a scrapper and make almost three times as much money. So it's like you gave her a bonus for her last alimony payment. Yeah. Um, Ta- Tammy loves metal detecting. I love watching the videos too. I want to buy myself a metal detector and have fun with it. They're not very expensive. You can get a pretty decent metal detector for $100. You could get a really good metal detector for $100 if you don't mind buying an old one, like an old White's metal detector or something. If I were to buy a metal detector, I want a nice waterproof one this time, right? Because yeah, it just seems there's a lot of money, especially in the states, right? There's a lot of money to be had in the rivers, right? Lots of boats tipping and stuff. I watch those videos, and they're always finding, right, old coins, right? Those big large census and stuff, and in the early days, they used a lot of British and French coins, right? Not to mention the reals, but those were the bonus coins if you were finding them because they were like pirate treasure, right? But yeah, I like the metal detecting videos. I think the majority of the reason, because, for myself out there detecting, it's exciting when you find something, but you're not finding lots of stuff. You're digging lots of stuff, but lots of stuff is just tinfoil and beer cans and pull tabs and pop bottle caps and stuff like that, right? So for myself, I like watching the metal detecting videos, but I think I like watching the metal detecting videos because it's outdoors. So when I'm heavy into the lessons and the important topics in exploring the inside, and I get punch drunk with that, and I know I don't have time to go for a walk or get outside or something, then I know that I can get that little adrenaline, dopamine hit by watching, right, the Not Thursday, and watch him exploring old settlements, like really like the very first settlers to North America. Andrew, did you ever look for that channel of Jamestown uh, digging? Did you ever go and check out that channel? Uh, and actually, you guys, uh, that first settlement that came to North America in Jamestown, Renoke, and it was a lost. The whole town just disappeared, right? But somebody had carved the name of an island on a tree, and so they thought, well, maybe they traveled to that island. And so when they got on their ships to go back to England, right? Because there was nobody there, no settlements or anything. So there was no reason to drop off the supplies, that they actually went by the island, but they didn't see anything. They didn't see any civilization or anything like that. So they didn't even ground. They didn't even ground there. And this past year, they actually found the remnants of that lost community, the Renoke uh, group that got left behind in Jamestown. And they found the remnants. They found their cookware and their dishes and like knives and forks. And at that time, nobody else was in the area, so that it couldn't have been from any other group than them. So they actually did travel to that island and set up house there. So there are remnants, and it's in the what is it? Now they're doing DNA and genetic work to see in the people in the area, because they think they mixed with the indigenous, and they actually have remnants of the very first settlers to North America. Yeah, the Renoke group. I think they were a Renoke group. And yeah, so they found them this year. Really interesting, and the archaeologists are digging them all up right now. Not digging them up, but I'm sure they're digging some of them up, but they're excavating the entire area, right? Because they would have split up into little not villages, but they would have set up to little homesteads and pieces of land there. Yeah. Um, Yeah, they found so much in Jamestown. They actually they dug out cellars, and they found some of the people, because when the ships went back to England, they said they would be back in 6 months with supplies, and they didn't get back for over 2 years. They didn't get back to Jamestown, and they starved, right? Because the indigenous had surrounded them, so they couldn't even leave the fort. And so they ended up having to eat their own, right? So they were it was pretty bad. They were really, really starving, but they were digging up the cellars and finding the bones, and they were finding they went to the well and they found swords. And because when they're drinking and partying and stuff, like, they would drop things when they go to the washroom in the outhouses and stuff, right? So they were dropping things in the pits, and they found so much stuff, even the very first churches, because they were building the churches on top of the churches, because there would be fires and they would come down and they would rebuild on the same spots, right? There have been other excavations in Jamestown. Uh, I think in the 70s, they did an excavation. And of course, they didn't have good technology then. And, they did a messy job at filling in. And so, right in the 80s and 90s, when they started up in the excavations again, they had to do a better job, and there was a lot of cleanup in the mess that the last excavations are. So when I hear people say that they're not, like, in some of these really, really ancient cities, that they're reburying and they're planting trees and stuff over them without doing a thorough excavation on them, it's because they're leaving it for the technology of the future, right? And technology is moving really, really fast. So when they say the future might not be hundreds of years from now. It might only be 20 years from now, or 50 years from now, right? That they have better technology. It's just like they doing with the sonar in South America. There's finding all these ancient civilizations that are were built prior to even the great Egyptian pyramids. In that time, they were more civilized, and that they were had more technology, right? Than the time of Egypt when the pyramids were built. But again, a lot of these places are being looted, right? Because the artifacts are worth so much money. I was watching a documentary, was it last week or the week before? And they had what do you call them, scalpers, where they're going into these ancient cities, and they're cutting the artwork off of the temples and stuff, and then they sell the slabs on the black market. And they came up with a few of these slabs, and they're ending up in museums and in private collections and stuff. And they said, well, there's this ancient city, because they're referencing certain characters in these slabs that were showing up, and so that they knew that there was another city that was not discovered yet. And so they were searching for it, and they found it through the different villagers and stuff. And they can't really talk about it, because in retribution, if you talk about people going in there and poaching all this beautiful artwork from these lost civilizations, then you're putting the safety of the villagers at stake, right? But when they come across the artwork, they're trying to save it. They're trying to do their best to make sure that it gets in the right hands. But they've been doing, like, in the drones and stuff, flying over the jungles, and there's just city after city after city, and not just cities, but all these cities are connected by roads, like by serious roads, all connected to them in, like, trade. So, I could imagine, well, it wasn't the gold that was so precious to the Aztecs, right? And to these other civilizations. They loved the jade, right? The jade was what was worth more than anything. The gold they really couldn't care about. The gold they used for offerings, right? And they would throw them into the lakes. And I saw a documentary on them uh, diving and searching for these offering sites, right? But they're hard to find because the levels of water have changed over thousands of years. So they're hard to find, right? They're hard to find, but they're finding stuff. They're definitely finding stuff. I love history, you guys. I really do love history. Yeah, it's pretty exciting. And even with history, that's going to expand too over the hundreds or thousands of years. It's just going to be so meticulous. We're going to know the past just as easily as we know the present. And the present is fully documented now in this digital age. Like we're in this stage of our evolution now that we are perfectly documented. Now I have to say honesty and thinking that way and saying that, what happens if the digital age just goes poof, right? Not everybody is writing like Kathy and Andrew, right? Not everybody is documenting their thoughts on a daily basis. Even in writing books and stuff, that is something of the past. Oh my goodness, that book I read, you guys, this week. Oh, I put it over the counter there so I could redonate it to a little library. It was so good. I read it in 2 days. I was all proud of myself. I haven't read a book in 2 days in a long time. So you guys know, it was very, very interesting. It took me 2 days to read, and it was really excellent. So I'm going to take another walk to that little library and see if I can pick out another novel because it's constantly changing. And I'm going to take some of my books too, not just the book that I read, but I'll put a little collection of books together, and then I'll go and drop them off too, right? And yeah, and do a little bit of service there because all my books are mindset. Right? So, yeah. So somebody else can expand a little bit if they're interested, right? Maybe they'll just sit on the shelf because nobody wants them. Who's to say? Um, well, where did I I'm just coming back here. Oh, you guys are yapping more than I am. Uh I have seen videos about people finding large amounts of money in old houses they purchased. It caused them a lot of legal trouble when they made it known. Maybe just best to say nothing about it. I just watched a video of a woman and she tore the paneling off the bedroom walls, and some little kid in the 40s plastered all over their walls like wallpaper baseball cards. So they made a big deal. They brought in the news broadcasters and everything in, and they made a big production of this bedroom, and it was just covered in old baseball cards, right? Yeah, he just glued them to the wall, and then when they moved or when they did a renovation, they just put wood panels up over the baseball cards. But you hear about that all the time. Sometimes the old movie posters and stuff. I know they did with one house. They pulled off the paneling and they were the um, old monster posters, like the Frankenstein posters, and those posters are worth like tens of thousands of dollars now, right? And like a man of a thousand faces, like these posters were worth a lot of money. But to insulate the house, they used whatever they could. When I was urban exploring, uh, as the chink would come off the wall, as the white plaster, they would plaster the log cabin so it would be nice and smooth. But by the time I got in there to explore them, all that stuff had come off. But underneath all of that, you could see like old tin cans that were flattened and banged out and then put on the walls, right? They were just hammered onto the walls. That was to protect the walls from fire and to give it a little bit extra insulation, right? So they were doing these things to uh, better protect their homes. But when you say that too about the things that they find in the walls, it was quite common to put a shoe in the wall when you build the walls of your house, that you would put a shoe in the wall for good luck. Lots of times in the stairwells they would put like a coin, just one coin for good luck for the house. At the end of a staircase, when they'd have those little pillars, and that when I go into these houses, the top part of the pillar would normally be ripped off because it was a common place to hide valuables in the old days, right? So by the time I got to them, they were right. These staircases, these toppers at the end of the staircases would always be ripped off because people would be looking for valuables in that. Yeah, interesting. Um, I just learned that if you write an actual check, use the Uniball brand pen for writing. The ink is pigment based and can't be washed off for check fraud. Oh, isn't that interesting? Do people actually still write checks? It costs 4 cents to make 1 cent, plus the value of the copper of 2.8 cents. Yeah, it doesn't make sense. The Americans are getting rid of the penny. Oh, okay. So the pennies are out of the States now, too. It's a good thing. They've been around for a while. Like, can you imagine if they were still making silver dimes? Wouldn't that be crazy, especially in this day and age? Yeah. They did make a silver nickel though during the war. Didn't they make a silver V nickel? I think they did. It was because the silver was less valuable in the way of making armory and stuff. So they wanted the steel and the different metals for making armory during the wars, right? So they made like silver coins for a while in that. Ah, oh, right. The $1 and $2 bills. We don't have those too. I think the Americans still have oh no, but they started on the $1 coins now too, don't they? Tammy, you guys have the $1 coins now. But yeah, those bills, yeah, those $1 and $2 bills are gone too. But eventually the what is it, the brass and the copper in the loonies and toonies, they'll be worth more than the value of the coin itself at one point. I mean, metals are getting more and more hard to find. Mind you, they did find uh, two huge pockets of gold in the world. I think one was in Turkey, I believe, and it's miles and miles. This gold find is absolutely huge. And then they found another one in Canada. I was watching. I went into actual, not the news, but it's like the articles. It's almost like a digital newspaper. I went into the digital newspaper today, and they were talking about Nova Scotia today and how some guy had sued the government because you weren't allowed to go into the forest during the forest fires last year, and he got a fine for $26,000 or something, and so he sued the government and he won. He won the case, right? And I went, what do you mean you couldn't go into the forest? And I did. That's all they wrote. They just said Nova Scotia not allowed to go into the forest. I'm like, what's this all about? Then I went in and read it, and it was something that was from last year, but the guy won the case. I don't know if you heard about that, Tammy. Um, oh, sorry, Kathy. uh, I just learned that if you write, oh yeah, the check. Okay, I read that one. Uh, yeah, waterproof. And that way you can do the creeks, right? And if you can get the metal detector, that will spot gold, because a lot of the metal detectors won't go off in gold because gold is not metallic that way, so you won't be able to detect it, but they do make metal detectors that will detect gold. So that's really good when you do the creeks too, because then you can find a gold nugget, right? I sometimes watch those metal detectorists that do the underwater metal detecting, especially like in the swimming holes and stuff, the old swimming holes, and they do really well. But this one guy, he just does the creek beds and stuff with his metal detectors, and he's been hitting it really, really big with the gold, right? Um, I've seen videos about people finding large amounts of money in old houses. Oh yeah, I read that one. I'm going up and down. Uh, I read that one. Oh, I know. Isn't that exciting, Andrew? That's where the history is for sure. But I know, like in the Slavic countries, there are some treasure hunters that are doing the little mounds, right? Not the big mounds, but the little ones, on the side of the mountains where people would be buried with their beloved items and stuff, that they're actually breaking into those. And also, when we were talking about hiding valuables in people's houses, like in those villages and towns, like in Portugal and in Spain and stuff, when they actually made their homes out of the side of the cliffs and caves and stuff, that they would hide their valuables behind big slabs of concrete or rocks or something that were made to build their dwellings. And they're taking the metal detectors in there, and they're finding all the religious artifacts and stuff that they were hiding, right, expecting that after the wars that they would come back for these items, but they never came back to their homes, right? Once these villages were gone after the First World War and the Second World War, these villages totally died out. I would love to go find a old abandoned farm with an orchard. It'd have to have an orchard, right? And then to be able to go in and have my own fresh orange juice and apple trees and pear trees. Oh, especially pear trees. I just love fresh pears. That was the one thing about living in Vancouver, was all the fruit trees, just going down the back alleys and picking pears off of branches that were hanging over the fences, and pears and plums. Oh my goodness. Or going down to the train tracks and picking blackberries. Yeah, my mother made the best blackberry pie. She'd make huckleberry pies for us too. We loved the huckleberry pies, but it would take all day to pick huckleberries. And being little kids, we didn't have the patience for that. But she'd send us down to Stanley Park or something to pick huckleberries. And you'd need a whole ice cream pail to make one huckleberry pie, because once you boil them down, they're just nothing, right? But oh my goodness, the pies were absolutely delicious. Yeah. But yeah, the castles in England and Scotland and stuff, I would love to go and just touch buildings like I tree hug here. When I go for walks and I'm tree hugging, I would go for walks in these old cities, and I would just hold on to the slabs of stones in these old buildings, knowing that, somebody 500 or 600 years ago, right, might have been leaning up against these stones too, or pouring their poop buckets out the window and letting it slide down these stones to the sidewalks below. right? Can you imagine? We complain about how the world is today, but can you imagine the streets of England like before Queen Victoria, right? that 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 it was absolutely just disgusting that they actually had to have rings that would have perfumes in them, and pendants that would have perfumes for them, because women would actually faint, right? And they would drag their dresses in this stuff on the sidewalks. Like, I bet you they didn't even walk on the sidewalks, right? There probably wasn't even any sidewalks. It was probably just muck and dirt and poop bucket stuff. And we complain about how the world is now. I think I'm pretty content with living in this day and age. I think, yeah, I'm more than content. I am super grateful, right? Super grateful to be able to wake up to some of these ideas in this day and age. I could have been trapped, right? I could have been totally enslaved in the existence that I was in, that my family was in for probably hundreds, if not thousands of years, right? That we have a better opportunity now moving forward, that our bloodline could do much better now than they have been in past generations, right? Yeah. Um, Kathy, do you like videos and things about what Cindy is talking about? Just wondering if you live in Canada too. Uh, Tammy, I am interested in history and metal detecting and bottle digging, and I have done some of it myself. Yeah, I remember when I got my first hutch. Right, I got my first. It was a Pepsi hutch that I had gotten, and I was super excited when I got it. And actually, Kathy had to tell me what I had because I didn't know. I knew it was some kind of old pop bottle, and I had just gotten into the hobby of bottle digging because I had just found a bottle dump, a garbage dump, right across from the very first fort in well, it wasn't the first fort in Manitoba, but it was the first settlement fort in Manitoba, and they had a dump across the river from the fort, and I found this old dump, and I was the only one digging there for 3 years. It was so exciting, actually. I got rid of all my bottles again. I am thinning things out. But this is an old tray, and this is kind of the stuff that I got in that dump. Look at that tile. Like, that must have been a floor tile, right? And it's got little maple leaves on it and stuff. And this bottle dump, an old medicine bottle that I have here, an old medicine bottle that I have. These were was a dump from uh 1890 to 1910, this dump, and I dug in it for years, and all of this stuff, right? It's so cool. Like, look at that. It's an old doll body that I dug up in this. I got lots of little doll parts and stuff. There's a little doll there that I found in the dump, and you could see like the arm didn't break off. It was the little pieces of string, because in those days they would string these things up, right? Look at this little bronze pelican, and it's made of bronze. Like, this was all from that little dump that I found, right? Like, look at a little doll leg that I found. Like, it was so much fun. I just absolutely. Oh, look at this one, you guys. This is cool, right? It's part of a doll head. That would have been a big doll, right? From the 1890s, between 1890 and 1910, a ceramic doll head that I found. But this was and this one here, look at it, was an old clay clay bottle of something, but this is the stopper. So, and then the bottle would have been down here somewheres, right? I thought that was pretty neat. But I used to just go in and I would just spend all day there just digging stuff up. Oh, look at this one too. I found that. It was an old doorknob, right? It was an old doorknob that I found in this dump. But yeah, I would just pick up this stuff and I would put it, I would just put it on the tray. Look at this. This was an old clay marble. An old clay marble. Like that's an oldie for sure, right? And then they used to make buttons out of bone, right? So I have bone buttons and abalone buttons and yeah, glass buttons. Yeah, that was pretty fun, right? This is just lots of fun, the things that I would find in this old dump. But yeah, I put it on a little dainty tray and I just keep it on my shelf here. I dropped something on the floor. Put that back on my tray. But yeah, I got that plus tons of bottles and old ice skates because people used to skate on the river. You know, they would skate on the river and the old skates were always fun to find and old stoves. And it was a big garbage dump, right? And I never told anybody about it and I dug in it. And I only went like, maybe twice a week. I would go digging in this garbage dump for 3 years. I did it. It was so much fun. Only do it in the summertime, right? And but if I had known that they were going to build a big high rise, and they built a great big, oh, it's like 24 high rise over it, and they dug up the whole dump, right? And I always would walk by and just to hope to bump into like a foreman or something and say, hey, if I bring a helmet, can I dig up these piles of dirt here? Because I would know in those piles of dirt there would be all kinds of goodies. But yeah, Kathy was the one who had to explain to me what I had found when it came to the hutch that I found. I was pretty excited about the hutch once I had found out what it was. She had to explain the stopper. I says, "Oh, there's some kind of metal thing inside," and I pulled it out. She goes, "Oh, Cindy, you found." She was more excited for me than I was. And then that hutch, I took it to work because we did auctions in the window every month, and people could bid on the auctions. And so they had a pop auction, old pop bottles and Coke bottles and paraphernalia trays and refrigerators and stuff. So I said, put the hutch in. That'll help you'll help your auction. And they did really good on the auction that month. Yeah, but yeah, bottle digging. I love bottle digging. Uh yeah, East Coast. I haven't been to the East Coast, Kathy. Well, I haven't been there since I got engaged. So it was like in the mid 1990s. I went to the East Coast. Me and my husband rented a car and we did the entire East Coast. It was so much fun. I couldn't believe how much French was spoken there too, though. That really blew me away that they spoke total French and they didn't speak any English at all. I thought that they only did that in like Quebec, but no, they did that on the East Coast too, especially in the Bathurst in New Brunswick area. Lots of French people in New Brunswick. Um, I just saw a video 3 days in China and Japan. They found real dragons that were buried and in other places and countries. Yeah, the dragons are still around, kimono dragons. For me personally, I think the dragons were symbolisms, right? They were probably they found in their excavations because they were doing excavations hundreds and hundreds of years ago too, that they probably found dinosaurs, right? They finally found dinosaurs, they found T-Rexes and stuff, and they just called them dragons, and they built them into into the mythology. But not only that, maybe something that they did, like when I did when I was a little kid, I would lay on the grass and I would stare up at the sky and I would see animals in the clouds, right? So I would see dragons in the clouds. And when the dragons move and stuff, you could like imagine battles and stuff with the dragons. And and then of course, like they got kimono dragons and stuff in Japan. But you know, I would think if there were actual dragons at one time, we would have found the bones like we have found the bones of the dinosaurs, right? I think we would have found them by now. I think it's probably part of the mythology, but I could be wrong, right? I could be wrong in that. You know, you can't. It's only unknown until it is known, right? Um, That's great that you got those opportunities there in that era dump. That is really cool story, Cindy. You were exploring there for sure. I think I have some videos up of that too. Maybe you'll be able to find those, but I may have just posted them to my Instagram. I was posting on Instagram quite a bit. I'm going to be going back to Instagram one day a week, but I just got to find a way to make sure that I'm keeping it in exploring the inside and the outside, not to trail off because I did a lot of interviews and talking with other people. But a lot of people just wanted to kind of bask in my company. And I actually want to delve into topics when I talk to them. I had my friend Pearl from the Philippines. She messaged me a couple of weeks ago and she wanted to know if, I wanted to go in and have a conversation with her on Instagram. So I think probably when I do, I'll be messaging her and make sure because she took that time to message me to keep in touch with me. I loved Pearl. I haven't talked to her in a very long time, but but yeah, if I go in to Instagram, I'll probably just be doing one day a week on Instagram, and then I'll take away one day of posting in my what's my good cheer. And so I'll go down to 4 days a week in that. Then I'll do one day my Sundays chatters live, and then I'll do my one day on Instagram. But if I go on Instagram, it will be a long show. I'll probably be on my live for about an hour at least, like I do on my lives here. What time is it? 9:04. Oh my goodness. Let me come down in the comments, see where we are here. Talk about dragons, Cindy. On our way to church, we saw this one house has a huge dragon statue in the front of their house, and it was black and had some red in it. Well, that's pretty neat. Do they have lots of old houses and stuff in Michigan? I would assume so because, you know, the Great Lakes are so beautiful, right? So I think when North America was actually settled, I would think a lot of people wanted to live around the Great Lakes, if for nothing else, all the great fishing, right? Um, You don't do Instagram, Tammy? Yeah, I love YouTube. I did Instagram. Actually, what's my good cheer? I practice my craft on Instagram, and I did Instagram for I think 2 years. My live show was on Instagram before I brought it back to YouTube because I am a Google girl. I really am a Google girl. I loved Instagram, but if my Instagram wasn't moving in the direction that I wanted to move in, like I wanted to keep it exploring the inside and the outside. And sometimes, I found that I would be drawn into conversations and not be able to properly flow in that because right? Because the comments and the I want to talk to you, Cindy, would show up in the comments, and it would be distracting for me. So I would have a hard time in finding my flow in that, right? But I think, it's important for me to cover the platforms, and Instagram is a very popular platform. And for the most part, I was very comfortable. I made lots of friends there on Instagram. And I think, it's like riding a bike. As soon as I get it back into it, I'll just jump right back into it. But what I want to do is I want to concentrate on this addictions course that I want to take, uh, and get that done. It's going to be a 6 week, I think 6 weeks or 6 months. I'm going to check into it. I'm starting it tomorrow. I'll be downloading the program tomorrow. I'll be starting it, in the very least, setting it up tomorrow. And then I think like Monday to Friday, I will make sure that I put in at least an hour every single day, and then of course leave myself room for studying for the exams, right? Because there'll be little exams in between each uh what do you call it, each aspect of the program. When you finish a chapter, right, you'll be doing exams in that, and I want to do well in that, right? And then I'll be accredited. Wouldn't that be amazing? Because I'm not accredited in anything I do. And I think it's an important thing, because I think at some point we're going to get cracked down on, because there's so many people out there, right, doing their thing without even the lessons under their belt, just following the content of somebody else, and sharing that the insights that belong to somebody else, and not even their own insights, that right, it will get cracked down, and they'll want to see that credited content out there for anybody who is right, sharing insights. Because otherwise, right, you're going to have, well, I believe everybody should have the right to share in their beliefs, but you have to make sure that people understand that they're beliefs and not facts. And then again, the opposite way around, that these are facts and not just beliefs. And here's my certificate to say so, right? Old Michigan history is made up a lot of different Indian tribes and a lot of French people population from the 1800s. Yeah, because Canada scooted them all out, right? Oh, maybe not, because the French were having a hard time too, right? The French and Indian Wars too. Yeah, that War of 1812, that was a big one too. And plus, in the Revolution, I don't know if it got really up into the northern states, but yeah, yeah, I love history, you guys. Okay, well, it's 10 after. I don't mean to keep everybody. It was nice chit chatting. I enjoy talking about the history and stuff, and I really appreciate that kept me you kept me in line today, that I just didn't go off in a flow, right? That I understand that on Sunday nights we're just getting together, and we're just shining and spending time with each other, right? It is important. It is important. But I got a busy week this week. But if you guys want to come in, I'll be back tomorrow night. And what's my good cheer? 9 p.m. I will be back. If not, we'll see you next Sunday. Thank you, Andrew and Owen and Tammy, Kathy, all you guys. Thank you so. Thank you so, so much. Oh, William made it in tonight too. Oh my goodness. Hello, William. Yeah. Oh my goodness. He came in here early and I didn't even see him pop in. Oh my goodness. You guys, thank you so much for coming in. We'll see you next week.